Remember when we used to talk about the paperless office,
e-commerce,
signing a contract on paper,
and even giving out an agent's pager number?
We're in a mobile world.
We're in a mobile world, and your business needs to be too.
It's a digital world.
Workflow is changing, and so too are our experiences.
There are over 350 proptech players right now
competing for the space.
How do you keep up with it all? And what's next?
Welcome to Founders,
a new podcast with Josh Phegan
on the future of workflow in real estate.
One of the most important things inside a business is about making sure that you've got the right data, but it's about the relationship with that data. And we're now in a world where potentially data is actually equal, but relationship is not. Rahul, we've got you joining us from iD4me. This is an incredible conversation that we're going to have today. We're going to talk about access to consumers, what it actually looks like, and how agents can actually play a very different game to be able to get access to data, to build relationships, to ultimately end up in great listings and great sales inside of the marketplace. Tell us a little bit about what is iD4me and how does it actually help a residential real estate agent?
Josh, thank you. Great to be here. My name is Rahul, General Manager at iD4me. So data, interesting, a lot of conversations in real estate recently about data. iD4me helps agents in many ways right now. One of the biggest ones is we give agents the power really back to the agent to be able to use the data and drive a better strategy and much better outcomes. So unlimited access to some of the most accurate and the biggest data pool in Australia today, iD4me. It's a Google style search bar. You log in, find anyone, anywhere, anytime. You just search a street name. You can search Josh Phegan. You can search an email address, a mobile number, hit enter, and off you go. Everything you need to know about that individual within seconds, and enough to pick up the phone and have a very good conversation.
Which is pretty amazing, right? And I know I sound old when I say this, white pages, right? And it was actually, this is a thing that was around. Believe it or not, they used to drop a phone book to people's houses and you would literally go by surname and you would find them. And then there was reverse directories when it started to become electronic. Yep. And then that kind of disappeared for a while. And now all of a sudden, when I saw iD4me and I was like, oh, so tell me a little bit about that, because there's got to be some pretty interesting text. So I went in there and I typed in my name and it came up with my address and it came up with my mobile number and my office number. And I was like, wow, this thing is actually pretty amazing. So a lot of people are going to ask some questions. Are you okay if we go with a couple of simple objections and see how that actually works in the real world?
Absolutely.
So first thing is that obviously there sits in Australia a thing called the Do Not Call Register.
Yep.
What's the requirements around Do Not Call Register and how is data washed to make sure that either it sits or it doesn't sit on the register?
Great question, Josh. So and a lot of agents aren't aware of that. That's why I think it's good to cover this. Do Not Call Registry is from ACMA. You have to wash the data every 30 days. So you can go and put your number on the registry today, your personal number, not your work number. And that means no one who doesn't have access to your data today, you're not someone who's working with you directly, can call you for any telemarketing or to sell anything really. So we wash close to 8 million mobile numbers against the Do Not Call Registry every 30 days.
Wow.
And we do that really to help the agents and to have better conversations, to know who you're about to call and to be comfortable in knowing that the number is not on the Do Not Call Registry and you're not going to get caught out.
So it's an interesting part because we hear a lot about terms like first party and third party data. I've just been to the UK, so excuse my conversation on that. But so first party data, someone comes to an open house, I met you, Rahul, lovely to see you, I get your mobile number, would it be okay if I call you to let you know when it sells or what it makes, or to give you a follow-up call to see if the property holds an interest?
Yep.
So a lot of real estate agents would understand that data pretty well because you're getting it every Saturday. But ultimately, one of the great challenges in business is that ultimately you're going, well, hang on a second, I didn't get to meet the neighbours next door. So how do I let them know that this listing's coming to market? Or there's just been a great sale price. How do I let the people in this street know that there's actually been a great sale price? And I'm not yet dominant as an agent to have all of that data because I've met them in the first party. So there's third party data. So third party data sources are not a new thing. It's about a conversation around being able to get access to those people that you could go and make calls to. How do you get sort of access to that level of data or that sort of information to be able to build this database of 8 million plus, mobile numbers inside of the Australian marketplace?
Yep. So like you said, first party data, pretty straightforward. You collected that data yourself. Third party data is when aggregator like us is working in the market, collecting data from multiple sources, bringing it together, making sense of it, and then giving that information to you that can be then leveraged to call everyone else on the street, like you said. I think the important part of that is the information consented or not? So do we have the right consent in place that the person can be marketed to for a product or a service? And that's when I think a lot of agents are getting caught out right now when they go and purchase a third-party data and they don't realize that data is not consented to. I think you mentioned something similar in your podcast as well.
Yeah.
So when you're working with us, you can be sure that the data is consented, can market to these individuals. They have ticked the box in terms and conditions when they've gone and into a lottery to win an iPad or an iPhone or something of that nature, and they've consented to receive marketing correspondence from third-party vendors. So I think the consent is the key part there.
So when you're calling someone, so I find your name and your number, and okay, great, you're at number 12, and I've just listed number 10, and I ring you, and let's say I get that my great fear, because agents are really good at conjuring up fear and objections, right? And you say, how did you get my name, or how did you get my number? Well, what's best practice in what you've seen in agents that are using the service?
Yeah, so look, best practice is to be honest, really. We work with a reputable third-party business who work with a lot of real estate agents in the market called iD4me, and be honest, tell them where you got the information from, and if they're more curious, if they want to get more information on how we got the details, we'd be more than happy to talk to them directly and explain to them how the information was collected and exactly what form they filled out, what time, and the data was collected. But I think it's also important to mention that, in reality, what we see in the market today is when an agent calls someone, they're calling to say hello, build a relationship, have a conversation as the other agent in the neighborhood, and just get to know them better. But in 1 in 1,000, once in a while, you do get someone who really wants to know how the information was collected, and we've got the agents back.
We're always in that position that we conjure up the most fearful moment that probably never ever happens. Yeah. But if I can get that objection handled, then it makes it so much easier. And what I've always done, if I've never met someone first, I often just say that at the start of the call. Hi, my name's Josh. We haven't had the opportunity to meet as yet. The reason for my call, I'm a local real estate agent. Number 10 in your street is actually just coming to market. Yep. I believe that you own number 12. Yep. I was just wondering, would it be okay if I let you know when number 10 sells and what it makes? And by the way, did you have any plans into the future? And might I be able to assist you to give you an idea in the value of your place? If the conversation's going well.
Pitch.
Yeah, and that's the lesson though, isn't it? Right? About literally, I always think that in life, first of all, you've got to get the commitment. And the commitment about being a great real estate agent is about saying, how do I have really timely, relevant messages to people in market to be able to progress those relationships? Yep. And then the secondary part is that then if I've got that commitment, then where are the areas where I go, geez, I'm fearful. I really need courage. I'm afraid about calling someone I've never, ever met before. Yep. And I don't know about you, but when someone rings me and I don't know the mobile number, the first thing I think of, who could this be? And then I go, and then I answer and I go, who is this? And why are they calling me? And what does it have to do with me? And it's not that I naturally get angry, but I'm naturally in this position that I'm like, I'm being interrupted in a moment in life. And so, okay, great. So what is this? But yet if it's super relevant, you should see how quickly my tone will change. Oh, Josh, we're just ringing you to let you know that your car's ready to pick up from service. Oh, fantastic. As opposed to, so by the way, what are you thinking about your current phone bills? It's like, and so the approach in is the most important thing of how those calls actually come together. So let's talk a bit about the search technology because I've used it. I jumped in and I found it ridiculously easy to go and do. Yep. So let's say, for example, you're one of those people, you get a mobile number ring you, and most people probably go to Google to try to search it. And if it's not 433 into the digit, doesn't necessarily come up. You type real estate agent next to it. That's what I do anyway. Now you can actually just go into iD4me, type in that. And if there's any record in Australia against that, sitting inside of that data warehouse, then all of a sudden you can actually say, oh, hang on, that's that Josh Phegan guy. And then you go, okay, great. That makes sense as to why that particular person's calling me. Yep. An email address, same conversation, pop that one in. You can also go down to a residential street address. Okay, great. So type it in, and if there's a record against it, that will then show up. Let's say I go more broadly. What are some of the things that I can do with the technology when it comes to either a street or a suburb or people aged over a certain age in a particular marketplace? Yeah,
great question. You can get really creative with the data, and it's because the technology has is now allowing us to do that. We have reverse search technology where you can search a mobile number and then Josh Phegan comes up with an address, and then you can click on that address and here's Josh's wife, and you can click on the wife's phone number, and she has 3 properties that's listed there as well. So the profiling part is amazing. We'll come back to the profiling part, but to answer your question, you can type a street. You've listed a house in that street. You mentioned you listed number 10, number 12. You're talking to them now, and hit enter. Every single address on that street will come up with the owner's details. You can then go address by address, reaching out to the people you want to reach out to. And let's go even further. Let's say it's a big street and you're a bit tired. You can then go the street name. Only show me people between the ages of 70 and 85, because you know that this cohort of people, if you make best friends with them, potentially might want to list a property with you, one of the investment properties you want to get rid of, or they want to downsize, or things like that. So you can really target by age as well, target, by geographic area. You can do the age bracket with a postcode as well. So you can really mix and match. It's, when I say it's a Google style search bar, you can literally type, I have this, and I have this 3 data points. Off you go, and just work your patch really, really well.
Founders is brought to you by Josh Phegan Digital. When we were setting out to go and create Josh Phegan Digital, we just had this whole idea that we wanted training to be on demand. And everything in our life is on demand. We just press play inside of the Netflix app. We press play on YouTube, play on Spotify. Why couldn't we just press play on training? And what we decided is we want to be super relevant to real estate agents, so that in under a couple of minutes each day, if you wanted to, you could upskill and you could grow in new ways. And so we decided that we were going to release this thing that we called The Edit, which is basically the latest in property news stories that's happening every week right the way around the country. So you could be incredibly sharp in your conversations with sellers. And then we built out the short courses, which was all about rapidly building skills, whether or not it's about learning how to get better fees or to put on an assistant. And then we actually wanted to give you access to blueprints, so you didn't have to wait for it every year. You could just watch it whenever you wanted and actually go from zero to hero around everything that it takes, from goal setting, self and energy management, what you're doing around prospecting, listing, negotiation, and actually just have a system for the way that you work. Together with, getting really inspired by some of the best people in the industry with the black and white interviews. Josh Phegan Digital is available on iOS and also on Android. It's an incredible app, and it gives you everything that you'll need to be a much better agent. It's time to switch on. Which is pretty amazing, though, when you start to think about, at an agency, we've already got this first-party data of all these people we know and we're afraid to call them, but all of a sudden there's this search technology that can tell me all these people I don't know, and we rush to it. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because what you're realizing is that you've got to be more relevant to people in a much better way. And it's kind of like that's where the paramedic builds the relationships so well, because they're super relevant to you at that point in time.
Yep.
So my best case uses is I say, okay, cool, I'm going into a new marketplace. What's my plan? Well, traditionally, we would get people to door knock a particular area. We would try to sign them up to receive a CMA report. We would then send that CMA report out once a month, once a quarter, once a year, whatever the story is. And then we'd ring them once a year, and we'd hope over time that we'd actually be trustworthy and that we would build that relationship to a point where then they would convert. And in the new world, that's changed, because all of a sudden data and information becomes so much more available. So what we tend to find is that real estate agents are building what we'd go to call maybe an item of value, and that might be like a market report on what's actually been listed and what's been sold in the course of the last 7 days. So they're literally building out the list of the new listings, building out a list of the properties that are sold. I've been getting that from real estate agents in my area in Balmain, where I live here in Sydney, and I find it really useful, because I'm like, oh, what are the new ones that have come to market that are similar to what I want to buy? Yep. What are the ones that have actually been sold that were similar to what I wanted to buy? And what did they make compared to what the original quote price was? Yep. And are there any properties that are new to market right now that are competing to my place, if my place was on the market? And are there any properties that are similar to mine that sold on the weekend? So then I get a bit of an idea on where my market value might be, if it's going up, down, sideways, all of the above. And so agents are actually learning how to build that. So what you're doing here is you're saying, okay, if you want to be about building data and building relationships with that, okay, street by street by street, let's choose the core streets in an area, because we know that everyone's going to have to drive down that street to get to those other streets, right? So we're going to just have a main street strategy, let's call it that, and we're going to try to ring through each of those people, say, hey, we're building up a bit of a market report. Would you like me to send you a sample of it? Love to send it to you every week. Would that be okay? Hey, by the way, where are things at with you guys? If ever you'd like us to pop out, give you an idea of a market opinion, we'd love to do that for you. And we do that over a period of time. We get the email addresses, we opt them in to go and do those things, and we build that relationship. Now we're actually being able to do it at speed rather than having to randomly hope that they're going to be home and door knock at 4 o'clock on a Thursday in the middle of a rainstorm to hope that we're actually going to get access to those people. And getting that data now is actually changing how it plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's the same information, but how do you make it relevant for that individual, isn't it? I mean, it is the example I put very easily. And actually, it was told to me by an agent. Let's say you call Bob. You have the address, you have Bob's name, and you have how much the property is probably worth, and you have a number. Now compare that to someone who's using iD4me. Bob, who's 38, he's married to Claire, and look at that, that's his socials. He loves Formula One, and he owns a pool cleaning business. Same information, packaged very differently. I would love to know more about how the economy is doing, because
or Max Verstappen.
That's right. So if you call him that, agent in the area, I've got some Formula One tickets. Just what do you think? He's going to love it.
Yeah.
Different conversation.
Yeah.
Spend the same cash.
I was wondering why you invited me to the Formula One, but that's so you start thinking differently about like the power. So talk to us a little bit about the profiling component, because I think that's an interesting one. I was giving you a use case before that there's some government legislation that's been around for a while about over 55s.
Yeah.
So and there's a couple of things you got to tick on the box here, but if you're over the age of 55, you've owned a principal place of residence for more than 10 years in Australia, you can sell that property and put up to $300,000 of the proceeds of that sale into your superannuation and not paying any tax on the way in, and up to 600,000 as a couple. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, imagine I went in, let's say my market area of Balmain today, go find all the people aged over 55, and then literally how do I then identify those people now that I've got that? And how many of those records have been owned for more than 10 years or so? Okay, great. Now I can filter down that. And there's actually a group of people that might actually be really interested in that very specific government incentive that's currently in play that could relate to them and their situation. I've never been able to do that before.
Right.
Because if you have a look inside of my normal residential real estate database, I don't have the age of my customers. So when you walk through the open home and I go, oh, great, first name, surname, mobile number, and age there, I've never done that. But yet now that you actually can. And what I found really interesting too is that when you have a look at my properties record sitting inside of it, you can also see the previous people that have been at that address over time. So it's like previous owners, previous even tenants. So talk to us all about whether profiling can be a really powerful tool about access for information.
Yeah, look, we have a reverse search technology which really allows you to dig a lot deeper into the data and get the exact cohort you're after in a particular geographic location. So, like you said, you put the postcode in, then you can do it by age bracket, or you can just put 55 or 60. So whoever is 60 years old in that area will then come up. And you can then go down street by street and click on the address, click on the person's name or mobile, and then you also see if they own any other properties than the properties they're showing up with right now. So and it takes as long as, it takes about 2 seconds really to do all this. It's a very, very quick system, one of the fastest single search platform in Australia today. And within seconds, you'll see, let's say it's a couple, they own 5 properties and they are across these postcodes, and, the guy owns a business and this is what he's interested in, and this is his unit trust, and this is the wife, and she works in a job, and this is her socials and court data. If you're after that level of detail, we go in the last 16 years for the court data as well. So a lot of granular understanding of an individual before you pick up the phone. So that profiling, even if you don't use a lot of the information in that conversation, just knowing that information just changes the conversation. And a lot of times that's the difference between getting a listing or a second meeting or someone just hanging up on you, really, because you just know that much more about that person, and that, would they be in their office or would they be doing something else, because you know what they do for work.
And it's also too about understanding the profile of the buyer, who, particularly in a difficult negotiation, tell me a bit more about them. Where do they come from? What does that look like? Who are they connected with? What does that look like in terms of additional properties they might own? So you can understand, do they have the capability to potentially operate at this level if they're buying a really expensive property?
100%.
What style of person that they actually are. It's a pretty amazing technology. Where did the idea come from to actually start iD4me?
Well, it came from my CEO, Danny. I wish I could take the credit, but it's not. It's the CEO, Danny. He's been in the data industry for over 30 years now. He's done exceptionally well. Very young man as well. And so yeah, he came up with the idea because we could see there's a gap in the market. We could see that the power was not with the agent. There's a lot of businesses in this industry, proptech they call them, and they all service either the office or someone else, but agent's always the one, not the center of this. For us, the agent is the hero. Yeah, that's where we started. And any change we make, any update we do, we talk to the agents. We get, so yeah, for us, they are the ones who we look after.
It's kind of interesting because I've watched agents that have come into a market and taken 10 years to try to build the data in that marketplace. And it's one relationship at a time. And sometimes it's very slow going because the data that they're getting is not necessarily people that are going to be doing transactions, and because it's not necessarily relevant and all of the above. But you start thinking, the foundational piece. And when I was speaking with you and Danny, one of the key things I said is that 10, 10, 20, been in the industry for a long time. If you get a listing, the 10 houses either side, the 20 across the street, we've got to let them know about that listing. And then what we've got to do is we've got to invite them to that open home. And then once we meet them at the open home, then we've got to make sure that we actually let them know when it actually sells. And then, hey, I've got 2 buyers that are left over. What should I do with them? And it's a really simple process. But if I said to most real estate agents, okay, take me the last listing that you've actually taken to market. How many of the neighbours did you get to meet? Organically, because you put the board up and you put out an open flag, maybe 1 or 2. So there's like 35, 36, 37 records that are left behind, but they put out a just listed DL and they think that they've done the job, but you actually haven't spoken to the customer. And good luck, by the way, if the owner is absentee, if you're in a holiday market or you're in a unit market or some of those other things. And so all of a sudden, we just think about all these opportunities that are actually lost. And I think the number one thing that a real estate agent hates the most is seeing a competitor's board go up on the neighbouring property 2 weeks after they put a sold sticker on their own one. And you're like, how did that neighbour not want to reach out to me or not want to communicate with me? Or how did we miss that opportunity? Because it tends to be that within 90 days of a sold sticker going up on a board in a street, there'll be another one go up in the not too distant future. And it's about saying, hey, now is actually the opportunity that, and I feel like I'm stealing a line from the Yellow Pages, let your fingers do the walking, right? but that basic idea is that literally do your fingers do the clicking, I guess, to click, search and find. So now you can actually be more relevant, more timely, and be in a position that it's not weird if you actually learn how to actually communicate with the customer up front. And literally, I love that what you said, that let the truth set you free. So that if you do happen to get someone who's particularly narky, and my dad would always say this, sometimes you're going to meet people that haven't taken their medication today. Don't take that personally. But if you do, okay, great, no problems. We'll actually, just so that we use a third-party data source, and we can speak with iD4me about exactly how that's happened, and I'm more than happy to put you into contact. That just alleviates any barriers, because most of the problems with adoption of any technology or new system or new service that's out there is self-imposed. So as opposed to consumer barriers, we think the customer's going to say that. And I've said that to my dad, ring some of your past clients. Oh, geez, I haven't spoken for 5 years. I feel guilty. It's like, man, that's you. It's not them. But if you're ringing them about a listing or a sale or something that's happened in the street, then it changes everything because you can be highly relevant. And I think that consumers today relate better to highly targeted, highly relevant marketing messages.
Absolutely.
And we're used to it, like literally. And it's like that whole conversation in that what's happening in the social environment and the digital environment of our searches on Google and what we've done to go and look at something on Instagram, we then keep on getting fed, the correct marketing around those items.
Yeah, I mean, we're so busy. We don't want to be shown things that aren't relevant to us. We want to see things that are relevant, right? So I feel like for newer agents in the market, this is almost an unfair advantage they'll have. But if they use iD4me, how quickly you can understand your patch and really build on it. There's been nothing like this for an agent before. You can just sign up and you know what your patch is, and literally every single person with their full profile is available to you. Now how you use it is then would show where you sit in the next few years.
So there's a bit of a gap. I think, I'm not sure Australia's total size of population, but it's probably 20, 25 million or something. And there's 8 million mobile numbers there. So obviously there must be a fair few people that are kids that don't have it. There might be a few people that don't have mobiles. So what percentage do you think of Australians would be sitting inside of that roughly? And there might not be a specific number, but what's your gut feel on that?
I think we sit somewhere around 89% of all adults in Australia.
Wow.
So obviously, like you said, people who turned 18, so the 18 to 20-year-old people, there's a bit of a gap there because they take their time to come into the
Ecosystem. Yeah.
And same thing at the other end as well. The people who are about a certain age, they don't really do anything on their mobiles and fill up any forms and stuff like that. That's okay.
Yeah.
Apart from that, the coverage is fairly strong across Australia, even regional towns. You get data, and I think you touched on a point. People who can't be found. That group of people, and I'm sure every agent listening to this has at least 5 properties. They'll love to find the owner.
It's that disused house, and it's been sitting there and it's overgrown for 5 years. Yeah.
Jump onto iD4me. The chances that you'll find the owner just by putting the address in is very high, because we don't rely on contract or sale information. We rely on some very intelligent other data sources that link people to the properties they own. That's why we don't have, agents using iD4me don't have issues around, if the property is bought under a unit trust or it's bought under a superannuation fund, because we don't rely on those documents. We rely on other data sources that match people up with the properties they own, really. So, and if you don't find the individual, if you have a name, put that name in, and you can drill it down by, which state or postcode, things like that, and you'll be able to find the person you're looking for. There's about an 89% chance that you'll find the person.
Wow. So, and is there any data that's publicly available about what percentage of Australians are on the Do Not Call register?
Oh, good question, Josh. I don't know the answer to that actually, but it changes. It changes every month, and that's why agents need to be careful, because and we do have some agents who like to download information from the platform. We've allowed for that, and I completely understand why they have to do that. But you have to be careful, because when you download the information in a month maximum, that the NCR is old, and now you're putting yourself up for risk of potentially being fined if that information is not. If you shouldn't be calling that number, really. So, yeah.
So my preference is that literally, if I'm doing a just listed call, I'm going to ring you, and then I'm going to opt you in inverted commas. And at that point, then I'm going to transition you into my CRM, where I'm then going to manage the relationship until it gets to the point of doing multiple transactions. And I think that's a really interesting conversation. This is a phenomenal tool in the finding space and a phenomenal tool in profiling space to actually help you to get in front of the right people at exactly the right point in time, and to be able to do it at scale. So that then naturally you can be in a position that you're actually able to make calls with full confidence that you're meeting all the compliance perspectives, but also too that you're actually learning to make sure, okay, great, right person, right time, got them. Okay, great, let's ring it. So then you can actually be more targeted in the prospecting. A couple of quick questions. How hard is it to learn how to use the system from an agent's perspective?
It's not hard at all.
If you can use Google, you can use it?
I would say so. One of our best salespeople is 69 years old. And I had to show him how to use Zoom, but iD4me, he learns himself.
Fantastic.
It's super easy. It's very intuitive. If you go on the website, we got videos for everything. You can leave your email address, and we'll send you a full detailed demo if you want to. If you want to speak to a salesperson, a few of them, you can just go online and put in the time in the diary, and they'll give you a call and they'll talk you through it. Yeah.
And from an agent's perspective, do they sign up for 10 years, for a week, for a month? How does that work?
I'd love that, 10 years. No, it's month to month. We don't lock people in. We do have options for a biannual or an annual plan, but just go month to month. I always say it's cost you close to nothing to try it out for a month. And if it doesn't work, I'm happy to refund you. But we've never had that, because they love it. It's how easy to use. It's like social media, really. You get instant feedback from what you're putting in, and you're able to use that within minutes and see results. Yeah, that's why agents really love it. I mean, I was having a conversation with an agent in Darwin, and the problem in Darwin right now is not listings; it's actually finding a buyer. So they were able to use the platform to find the right buyer for suitable properties. So yeah,
it's a great conversation. If someone wanted to get more information, what's the website address they'd go to?
iD4me.biz. That's the website.
It's ID and for the number as opposed to FOUR. Yeah,
correct. Thank you. Yep, it is. ID number 4. iD4me.biz. jump on the website. All the information's there, everything you need. And yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah, that's it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us on our Founders Podcast.
Thanks, Josh.